Aloha everyone, hope you're having a glorious day. I wanted to share with you the most common response to the question. When I ask someone, do you know Jesus? Do you follow him? Very frequently, the answer that I get is, no, I don't believe in God. And to that I say, oh, well, why is that? Well, smug, I believe in science. Oh, me too. But why does believing in science prevent you from believing in God? Well, I don't need God to explain how we got here. Can you explain it to me? How we got here, that is. I mean, how did life start? Can you tell me, how did we get to the complexity of life in a single cell organism with all the necessary parts to keep it alive, starting from a rock? The membrane proteins to maintain an electrochemical gradient, pH, and osmolality in a hostile environment where everything breaks down if it's not constantly maintained and protected by a membrane, and DNA randomly assembled into all the information needed to create the proteins and enzymes to run the cell. I mean, enzymes read and make DNA. So DNA are the instructions to make these enzymes. How do you get both at the same time? Were both enzymes and DNA spontaneously assembled by chance at the same exact moment, in the same exact place, sealed safely away in a protective phospholipid bilayer cell membrane? This doesn't seem very plausible, and it's at this point that my science-worshipping friend points out the Miller-Urey experiment performed in 1952. Ah, yes, the Miller-Urey experiment. Well, that produced waste products found in urine. And they haven't bothered replacing the example of the Miller-Urey experiment since 1952. This does not produce anything close to the complexity of the essentials for life, and nothing remotely close to information specified in DNA. See, information always comes from a mind. Like a book comes from an author. DNA is information. Letters from an alphabet are not randomly assembled to create information. So science cannot explain life from non-life. And trying to explain how we got here without a creator gets even harder. See, every population geneticist knows most random mutations are deleterious to the overall fitness of the organism. Some random mutations are neutral, and an exceedingly rare are beneficial mutations. But when they occur, they carry all the DNA mutations that are deleterious, that have accumulated prior to that single beneficial mutation. Think about it for a moment. Do we hear on the news, wow, someone was born in Sri Lanka that can run the 100-meter dash in 4 seconds. I cannot wait to get that random beneficial mutation, that upgrade. It doesn't happen. See, my science-loving friend trots out the same examples that were in my high school textbook, which have not changed because there is no evidence supporting random mutations over time create new species. He talks about Galapagos finches, which is a great example of existing genetic variability that is expressed over changing environmental conditions. But once the rainy season goes away, the beaks change back. The same with the peppered moth. And bacterial resistance, well, this is just a broken gene in bacteria. From the perspective of the bacteria is actually broken. And it happens that the action of the antibiotic doesn't work on that broken gene. Or sickle cell anemia. I mean, patients having resistance to malaria, the Plasmodium falciparum. Well, if malaria wiped out the entire population and all we had were sickle cell genes, we would be in bad shape. Have you ever seen someone with sickle cell anemia? With a sickle cell crisis? They are super sick. I've taken care of them in the hospital. And this is not an upgrade. This is not an improvement. This is not getting more fit by mutations. This is deleterious. This is getting worse. In fact, 8 prominent evolutionary biologists pointed out these problems in the science journal Nature, published in October 2014. And they titled the article, "Does Evolutionary Theory Need a Rethink?" Remember, this is a peer-reviewed journal, so others who reviewed the article agreed with evolution's deficiencies. And at the Royal Society of London in November of 2016, top evolutionary biologists from all over the world agree neo-Darwinism can explain survival but not arrival. Darwinism cannot explain how first life got here or complex life arose from simple life. So science cannot explain higher life forms evolving from lower life forms. Science trying to explain how we got here without a creator gets even more difficult. See, creation of the universe and all that is in it explained without a creator requires imaginary words like quantum fluctuations. Yes, cosmogonists made up the words quantum fluctuations because all the observations and evidence of science point to a one-time creation event when something, namely the universe, came into existence from nothing. Since this creation event, science has never observed something coming into existence from nothing in the known universe, ever. But these creative dreamers have invented the word quantum fluctuations. Well, if quantum fluctuations exist, Mr. Science, why does a pizza not pop out of nothing onto my dining room table? If the silence that follows does not alarm you, it should. More problems exist with imaginary terms like inflation. See, the equations known to sustain our current universe don't work during this imaginary period in the model of the Big Bang. We are supposed to accept the Big Bang model on faith, believe our quotation science friends who cannot explain the creation of the universe without us granting them 2 miracles, which they make up the terms quantum fluctuations and inflation. It sounds to me that they are not comfortable with this. So they invented this. Now, many astrophysicists were honest enough and annoyed with the existing paradigm to publish the problems with the Big Bang theory, saying, number one, the theory cannot survive without fudge factors like dark matter, dark energy, though never observed, and number two, a smooth background radiation should not exist with Big Bang theory. Number three, the universe is predicted to be younger by observation without the fudge factor of dark energy. Hundreds of cosmologists have signed their name to this complaint, calling out a deficiency in the explanatory model for the beginning of the universe, because they know you can't just say something comes from nothing without inventing words like quantum fluctuations and inflation. Something takes someone with a mind to create it. A pizza has a pizza maker who creates it. So science cannot explain something from nothing without a creator. How are you feeling now about a religion of science? Well, we haven't even scratched the surface, because there's things like consciousness, which in neuroscience, it's really the awareness. And we know from our ideas and understanding and observations that consciousness is not contained within the physical matter. Intentionality of the mind is expressed through the physical brain and body. And how did this spontaneously arise? By an unguided process? Science sets out to explain everything we find in a box of space, time, and matter. So this box is defined by naturalism, by materialism, that it has limits of us only seeing, only understanding things that we can observe. See, science seeks to find truth through repeatable, predictable experimentation. And the mind, the soul, are outside of this box. The meaning of life, it's not something science can tell you. Morality, your choice to love someone, or what charity matters to you, science is silent on these matters. We just explained how one-time events, never observed after that one-time event, are outside of experimental observational science. So we conclude the origin of the universe and the origin of life is not an observed event. Therefore, Big Bang and Darwinism are faith, not science. My science friend tells me I cannot trust God is real without seeing, hearing, or touching him. That's a tricky one. But God considered this, and he did something quite extraordinary. He decided to put himself into the box we live in so that we could see him, hear him, touch him, and experience God as human. His name was Jesus. My science friend must decide for himself who Jesus is. If he carefully considers his teachings, his resurrection, the rapid rise of Christianity, the importance and relevance of living the way Jesus did today, here and now, even in our contemporary culture, well, then it's not science that will reject Jesus as God. It is the man who worships science. Blessings and aloha.